Welcome! My name is Doug Shook. My name's the very first one up there. That's because I'm the lead instructor for this course. Although this is a very big course. You can see how many people are in this room, and I've actually got a whole nother one of these happening right after this with about as many people in it. So there are, I think, 250 to 300 students signed up for this class this semester. It's a big class. Definitely can't do it by myself. There's another instructor, Dr. Garnett, who you'll probably only see in the labs. You're not going to see him here on Mondays, but he's assigned to help me out in the labs. And then we've got an army of TAs helping out as well, and that's why Vicky is here today.
Oh, I was going to use the exact words army of TAs, but I am Vicky. I am one of the head TAs. Like we said, we have so many, so there are two of us. Dorian's in class, but you'll see me and him walking around studio mostly, just managing TAs, but also there if you ever need help, have questions, or anything related to the class. It is my last semester with 131, but we're very excited for you. Some TA-related things, I'll let Professor Shook get all of the course-related things, but please check Piazza throughout the semester, because if we have any announcements for you, office hours related or studio related, it will be on Piazza, and it's really hard to reach 300 people at once, so we would greatly appreciate that. Dorian and I last semester did recitations every week, which were completely optional. They were on Zoom. If we just went over the material that you learned that week, we have those recordings and slides. People like slides more than joining Zoom on Fridays every week, so depending on what everyone's preference is, we might just post those slides, or we can go over them live like we did last semester, so stay tuned for that. But that's all I have.
Yeah.
And if you see me anywhere in the labs or anywhere, say hi.
And if you don't know what Piazza is, don't worry. I'm going to
sorry.
explain that to you a little. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to explain that to you a little later on today. I think, the biggest point that Vicky was trying to make is there's lots of people here to help you out. So please don't feel like you have to rely only on me. In fact, I'm only one person, and I'm often busy doing other stuff. So if you rely only on me, you're going to have to wait a lot. Much better to take advantage of the other TAs and other people who are here to help you as well. So
If you see people walking around the labs looking kind of lost, but like they still are interested enough to make money, that's probably me or Dorian. So please stop us. We're not busy, even though we look really busy and serious.
yeah.
That's just our job.
Same for me as well, actually. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thanks, Vicky. Awesome. All right. So yeah, we're going to hop into, the usual syllabus day stuff today. That's probably going to take about the first, hopefully not quite half of the time that we have today. But let's go ahead and dive right in. I want to make it very clear to everybody right off the bat that you're all welcome here. And I actually mean this in a couple of different ways, right? One of the questions that I get a lot is, who is this class for? The title of the course, as I hope you're aware, is Introduction to Computer Science. And that is meant very literally. This course is meant for anyone who is interested in learning computer science, even if they have never done any kind of computer science stuff at all. So if you have never written code before, if you have no idea what code looks like, never even thought about the concept of how to write a program, that's okay. You are in the right spot. If you've taken some comp sci before, if you took it in high school perhaps, or maybe you just took it on your own because you were interested, you're welcome here too. That is totally okay. You will still get kind of a feel for how we do computer science here at WashU, which may or may not be similar to how you did things in high school. One thing that I will say, though, is that if you have taken the AP exam and did well on it, I believe a 4 or a 5 will let you test out of this class. And actually, even if you didn't take the AP exam, but you have some computer science experience, there is actually a placement exam that you can take to test out of this class, which will allow you to basically skip this class and enroll in upper level comp sci classes right now, so you don't have to take this class first. If you have any questions about that, if you're not quite sure where you stand, like maybe you think maybe you could test out of this class but you're not quite sure, be happy to chat with you about that one-on-one after class is over. I can point you to where those things are, so you can take a look at that in more detail. But I will never tell anybody you have to drop this class. I will never say you shouldn't be here, because that's not true. I welcome everyone here, regardless of whether they've written code before or not. just want to make sure that everyone's aware that this class is geared for people who have not written code before. If you have written code before, some of it might be review. It may not be the best use of your time, but I'm not going to be able to make that decision for you. You're going to have to make that decision for you. So, let me know if you have any questions about that, or if you need any help making the decision about whether this class is the right place for you or not. The other way that I mean this, though, I want to make it very clear. Everyone is also welcome here in the sense that, listen, I am a cisgender, heterosexual white guy, right? That's pretty common for the field that we're in. I'm not, oblivious to that fact. I am very well aware that my privilege is a reason, at least in part, of why I'm standing up here in front of you today. I want to make it absolutely clear that everyone is welcome here regardless of your backgrounds, whether that socioeconomic backgrounds, personal histories. I really, really, really hope to see the field get more diverse. I have seen this field get more diverse in my nearly 15 years teaching this class and working on this stuff. So I think it's great to see lots of different people from different backgrounds in this course. And I mean that in other ways as well. Some of you may not be CS majors. Some of you may not plan to take a lot of CS classes. Maybe you're from bio, or maybe you're from another engineering discipline. That's okay too. Literally everyone is welcome here. If anybody, whether that be a fellow classmate or a TA or anybody at all, makes you feel unwelcome here for any reason whatsoever, please let me know, because that is absolutely the last thing that I want. I want this class to be very inclusive. I want anybody who wants to learn computer science at WashU to be able to learn computer science at WashU. That is extremely, extremely important to me. So I'd like to make that clear up front. That is my goal. That is what I want for this class. I want all of you to feel absolutely welcome here all the time. All right, let me tell you a little bit about myself. This is a game from a long, long time ago. Has anybody seen this game before or know what it is? I wouldn't expect you to. You're all way too young, probably. But this is a game called Gorillas. It came out in the, late 80s, early 90s probably. And this was my introduction to programming. So I've been programming since I was a child. I was a kid at the time. Video games are what got me into programming, and I kind of haven't stopped. Although I like other stuff too. But this game was really neat because not only did they give you the game, but they gave you the code for the game. So, the object is to throw exploding bananas at each other until you hit the other gorilla, right? But if you want to go in the code and change how gravity works, right, it's all right there for you. You can go and manipulate that. So that was fascinating to me, to be able to, actually get my hands on changing how stuff on the computer worked at that level. And that's really what we're all about in this class, is how do we, dive into what's under the hood of the computer and make it do the stuff that we want to do for us. And, that hasn't changed. I still play a lot of video games today. This is something from a program that I made. It's called a randomizer. I'm sure you're familiar with The Legend of Zelda, a very popular game. This is for an old, again, I'm an older guy. So this is Zelda 2, which came out in 1989 in the United States. I think maybe a little earlier than that in Japan. But regardless, I played this game growing up. Still play it today. I love this game. I speedrun this game. Used to have the world record in this game. Not anymore though. But I made the randomizer for it. I wrote a program that takes this game and shuffles it all up. This is a brand new map for this game that was generated by my code that I wrote that I can play. Right? So video games are big for me. If that's something that's interesting to you, we should chat sometime. But I realize that that's not what everybody's here for. I realize that there are lots of other things you can do with computer science. In grad school, I actually was more interested in physical applications of computer science. I designed digital cameras in grad school. That was what my grad school work was on. Specifically, the lab that I was in was designing, they were called imaging sensors that could be used, say, if somebody is on the operating table, snap a picture of their body, and it'll highlight, this looks like it could be a tumor, right? That's the kind of stuff that obviously at WashU, very interested in those medical kinds of applications. So, there's lots of stuff like that going on around here that these skills that you're learning in this class can help you with. And that's one of the things that I love about this class too, is that when I teach a lot of comp sci classes, I'm talking to comp sci majors, and I was a comp sci major, so that's fine. But in this class, while there certainly are some comp sci majors, there's a lot of not comp sci majors, and it's really, really fun and interesting to hear what all you students are doing with this information outside of this class. So if there's a big coding project that you're interested in working on, or if there's a reason that you're taking this class because I really want to do this in the future, I would love to hear about that. That's one of the coolest things for me to hear about. We will do some video games in this class, but we'll also do a lot more practical stuff too. It's not all going to be fun and games. All right, let's talk about the class itself. The structure of this class is a little bit different maybe than the classes that you're used to, but it follows a rhythm. So every week is going to go basically the same way, with one very important exception that we'll talk about in a little bit. But the way that the week goes is Mondays, obviously, we're here for lectures. However, before you come on Mondays, I'm going to ask you to review some material ahead of time, and I'll show you exactly where that material is in just a little bit on Canvas. I don't want you to come in completely blank, right? That's kind of not the idea, and the reason for that is because I truly believe that you are going to learn much better by doing. So this material that I'm asking you to review is little exercises, little practice problems. You're going to learn much more effectively that way than by listening to me spew words at you for 80 minutes. It's just a fact. Coding is a skill. The way you get better at skills is not by listening to me yap, but by practicing. So I want you to have at least a little bit of practice before you come in. Be at least a little bit familiar with the idea that we're going to be talking about before you come in. If you're not an expert, that's okay. In class on Mondays, we will review that material. So I'll actually ask you questions about the practice materials just to make sure everybody understands what's going on. If there's any gaps, I can fill those in. If there's any of the practice problems that you want to see me go through, I'm more than happy to do that. But most of the time, I'm going to bring other stuff in, and we're going to do more practice problems in class. We're just going to practice. I'm trying to get you as much practice as possible. That's how you learn a skill, like coding, is by practicing. So when you come to class on Mondays, I hope you're ready to participate. Hope you're ready to answer questions. I'm going to start usually by displaying some review questions on the screen that we go through, and then once we get through the review questions for that week, we'll just do some practice problems in class. That is the structure of Mondays. Wednesdays, or the other days that we meet, those are your lab sections. So in lab sections, we're going to ask you to do what's called a studio. Studios are in-class exercises. We want you to work on them in small groups. So you're all going to be assigned to a group. We'll have those group assignments for you when you show up to class on Wednesday for your first lab section. And you'll work on these studio problems in class, and you get credit just for being there and just for working on the problem for the entire class period. So this is intended to be a session for you to talk to your peers, right, and work together. Practice is good, but also being able to communicate your thoughts and ideas, very important part of this class as well. So that's why these group activities are important. I want to make it clear, though, that Wednesdays, you don't have to finish the studio to get credit for it. You don't even have to be correct. That's not the point. That's not the point of the studio. The studio is to come and give it your best go for 80 minutes. If you don't finish, okay, that's all right, but you'll still get credit just for being there. A lot of people say studios are participation-based, which I kind of hate that distinction, but it's not inaccurate to say. You get credit just for showing up. And then if you don't finish the studio, or you do it incorrectly, right, which happens. Sometimes people take a wrong turn. Happens all the time. I will post every week solutions to the studios. I do a studio review. I'll post a video of myself working through the studio, usually on Thursday or Friday, so that you can actually see, here's how I would have done the studio. Once you do that studio session, so those are both just kind of prep, right? The lecture and the studio is really just kind of priming you on these topics. Once you go through those two things, we're going to give you a homework assignment. So there'll be one homework assignment roughly every week. It'll be based on that week's topic. And you'll turn that homework assignment in the following week. So if we do the first studio, right, this Wednesday, That means the homework assignment would be due next Wednesday. Although actually, it's not going to happen until a couple weeks after that because of MLK Day next week. So I'll show you the calendar in just a second. And then once the assignments are done, there will be a short quiz, which is just kind of to check your understanding, due on Canvas every Thursday. And then you come back on Monday and we start the whole process over again with a new topic. So every Monday there'll be a new topic that we focus on. The studio is based on that topic and the assignment is based on that topic. And we just keep repeating that process every single week. It's a little different. It's not how all classes do things. I understand this. Students do kind of get a little anxious about that at the beginning of the semester, but I promise you, once you go through this cycle a few times, you'll get the hang of it. You'll get used to it for sure. I'm going to go over the calendar, which will kind of go through this in a little bit more detail in a second. But before I do that, does anybody have any questions about the basic flow or what these components are that I'm talking about? Any questions I can address right now? All right. Fantastic. Then I think it's probably time to switch over to Canvas and talk about some of the, less exciting course policy stuff. Necessary, though, for us to do. When you go to Canvas and you click on the page for this class, this is where you'll end up. And so right up here at the top, this is all just kind of reference information. I'm eventually going to post the slides from today, and I'm actually recording right now. I think this is important to note. I record every Monday, and I will post these I like to record stuff. I think I've recorded almost every class for the last 10 years, so I will record all of these classes and post them on Canvas as well, so they'll be available to you. So that's where you can find all of this stuff. But then down here, these are the actual modules. These are what I'm talking about, where you're going to do Monday lecture, followed by studio, followed by assignment, and then a quiz. Module 0 right here is the welcome module. So we're doing lecture 0 right now. You're in lecture 0 at this very moment. When you come to class on Wednesday, you're going to do studio 0. That'll be your first in-class group assignment. You have assignment 0, which is due next week, actually. And then quiz 0, which you can see is due January 23rd. However, I want to point out, I want to make it very clear that this is a practice. So module 0 does not count towards your grade in the class. These are warm-ups. These are practice. So it's a practice assignment just to get you used to how you complete assignments and how you submit assignments. It's a practice studio just to get you, used to working with your group, get you introduced to your group. I hope you come. I hope you do these things. I hope you take the quiz. But if you miss it for whatever reason, does not count. Module 0 is practice. Module 0 is warm-up. The real deal starts here with Module 1, types and names. And so the first thing that you'll see for every module is something called the exercises. And if I click on the Module 1 exercises, it takes me to this website that introduces, I call this a textbook. I mean, it quite literally is an online textbook that explains course concepts and also gives you lots and lots and lots and lots of practice problems. These problems are not graded either. These are quite literally just practice. These are prep materials. I will not collect the exercises. I will not grade the exercises. You are welcome to ask questions. You're welcome to ask me to go through them in class. In fact, I would love it if you did that. If you are struggling on one, you're like, what the heck's going on? Bring it to class. Ask me to go through it. I'd be more than happy to do that on Mondays, or you can make an appointment with me, come into my office, whatever the case may be. But I'm hoping that you'll do these before coming to class on Monday, that you'll at least have some idea of what we're going to be talking about, even if there's holes or gaps or confusion still. I just don't want you to come in completely cold. I also think that this is by far where the most possibility for learning exists. Because again, you're going to get far more out of this class by getting your hands on the keyboard and practicing typing than you will listening to me yak for 80 minutes. I very strongly believe that. So the idea is that you'll do these ahead of time before showing up to class on Monday, and then we'll do these, we'll do even more practice problems in classes on Monday as well. As far as other course policies go, let's take a look at the grading breakdown. So you can see there's only 4 graded components. I've already talked about 3 of the 4. There are weekly assignments worth 30% of your grade. Those studios, which again, this credit you get just from showing up, just from coming to class. You get that credit. And participating. If you come to class and do homework for a different class, then I'm going to be like, hey, you're in computer science right now. Why don't you do computer science, right? But if you show up and you work on the studio, you get credit. The quizzes are very self-explanatory on Canvas. And then we have this big guy down here, the exams. Let's talk about the exams for a moment. Those are the exception that I talked about, which kind of break up the flow of the class. So we're going to go through 3 weeks of material and then have an exam. So we'll do that 3 times. So I'll do 3 weeks an exam, 3 weeks an exam, 3 weeks an exam. That means we have 3 exams during the semester. Those are evening exams, so I think that's very, 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 very important to point out. In fact, I'm going to pull up the calendar and show that to you right now just so that everybody is completely aware of the fact that, oh, that's not the right class, that's my other class. Let me put the correct class up here. Want to make sure everybody is very aware of the fact that the exams take place in the evenings on Thursdays. So here's our first exam right here on February 13th at 6:30 p.m. So this is a big class. That's why we have to do it that way. The only way we can have everybody take the exam at the same time is to do it in the evenings. This is not going to change. That exam time is not going to change. I didn't even set that exam time. The university did. I couldn't change it even if I wanted to. That's all set up by the university. We have like 4 or 5 rooms booked to accommodate. It's a big process. So cannot move this. Cannot move this. That means that if you have another class during that, which happens sometimes, you're gonna have to figure that out. That's not a thing that I can accommodate. That's not a thing that I can fix. In fact, we try to make people aware of this even in the course description so that you can plan around that accordingly. So please, take a look at your schedules. If you have any scheduling conflicts, you may want to reconsider taking this class this semester. Maybe we offer it every semester, so you're welcome to come back and take it in the fall. It doesn't quite fit in your schedule, but I cannot be flexible on these exam times. It's just not possible. And along those lines too, you'll see this in the course policies. But let's talk about what happens when you have to miss something, right? Like, I understand that things are going to happen. You're not going to necessarily be able to come every day. In fact, I think it's very important to make it clear right now that if you are sick, I don't want to see you, right? I don't want to get sick. I've got a family at home. I don't want to get them sick. So please, if you are sick, do not come to class. I know students get anxious about missing class, but fortunately there are ways to make up for those absences, right? So every one of these course components, except for perhaps the quizzes, has flexibility and leniency built in. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about assignments. Assignments are due in your lab section. You physically have to be there in your lab section to submit an assignment. It is not submitted online. Well, it kind of partially is. But the way that assignments are submitted, you actually have to demonstrate your work to an instructor or a TA to get credit for it. I will talk about this a lot more as we get to our first homework assignment, which is going to happen in the next couple weeks. But think about what that means. That means if you're physically ill, right, unable to come to class that day, you cannot turn in your assignment. There is no Zoom option to turn in assignments. We want you to physically be there and have a conversation with your TA about the work that you did to get credit for it. That's a very big, very important part of this class. So what happens if you are sick? Right? It happens. I really don't want you to come to class if you are sick. With assignments, you get something called late coupons. So everybody is going to be given 14 of these late coupons. I haven't distributed them yet. There's no need for them yet. But I will eventually give you 14 late coupons, and every one of those gets you an additional day. So if you are sick on Wednesday when the assignment is due, but you're feeling better on Thursday, the next day, and you're able to come into my office hours and turn in the assignment on Thursday, that would cost you 1 late coupon because it is 1 day late. your grade is not affected by this, right? Your grade is full credit. You can turn it in late, full credit. No grade deductions or anything like that. But if you run out of these late coupons, so you have 14 of them, right? But if you run out then, and you try to submit an assignment, the TA is going to be like, sorry, I can't. You don't have any late coupons left. It's up to you when you get to decide to use these. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to tell me. You just say, oh, I can't come to class today. I think I can make it in by Monday, and I have the 4 or 5 late coupons that would be required for me to submit that assignment on Monday. Just show up on Monday and turn it in. That's all you have to do. The system automatically takes care of it. If it's late, when the TAs submit your grade, it will automatically subtract those late coupons. It's all automatic. It's all handled by the system. So you don't need to ask. You don't need to worry about it. It just is. You're just welcome to use it whenever you would like. And I hope that you do, right? I want to make another point. There's no reason to hang on to these. You do not get extra credit for these. Somebody's going to ask me that anyway, and it's going to drive me crazy. But you do not get extra credit for having these. If you get everything turned in on time and you don't have to use any of your late coupons, then I'll shake your hand and say congrats on a healthy semester. Like, I don't know, right? Like, that's what's expected of you, right? I'm giving you the late coupons for when bad things happen. You don't get a bonus prize for not using your late coupons. So please use them if you need to. If you write to me and say, hey, I'm really not feeling well, can I have extra time on my assignment? I'm going to say, yeah, you got late coupons. Use them. That's quite literally what I'm going to say. So yeah, just kind of want to make sure that you understand that process exists and what it's used for. And this is also another important thing to point out. No more than 7 can be used on a single assignment. So I'm not going to accept anything more than a week late. You can't come in and give me stuff that's really super old. Although, honestly, if you find yourself in that position, while the late coupons aren't necessarily going to help you, come into my office and talk to me. These course policies will work well for 99% of the people in this class, but it's impossible to predict every situation. It's impossible to predict every student's path through the semester. So if you find yourself in a situation where the course policies aren't working for you, come in and talk to me. That's my job, is to help people in those situations. Don't feel like you're completely, totally stuck. As far as studios go, so if you are really not feeling well on a studio day, you are allowed to miss 2 studios. So you're allowed to miss 2 absences on Wednesdays without having any effect. There are 10 studios, right? This semester. That means you have to get at least 8 of them to get full studio credit. You're allowed to miss 2 without any penalty to your grade. And then as far as the exams go, if you happen to be ill or have some other conflict during an exam, I do not offer makeup exams, and the reason is the same as it is for many things in this class. It's a huge class. I would literally have dozens of makeup exams during some of these exams, especially during the really bad, when COVID was really bad. I mean, it's insane. Cannot logistically keep up with that many. So we use a different process in this class. If you are unable to make an exam because you're sick or there's some other conflict, you have an exam drop. So there are actually 4 exams this semester, but we drop your lowest exam grade. So you only technically have to take 3 of them. And the way that this usually works, or the way that I think about this, you have the 3 in-semester exams, and then there's the final exam, which takes place after the class is over. The final exam, I really just view it as the makeup exam, right? If you can't make it to exam 1, 2, or 3 for whatever reason, take the final. That's your makeup exam. The final is cumulative, so whatever was on that exam that you're missing will also be on the final because it is cumulative. So, if I need to, I can use that to judge your knowledge on that particular exam that you missed. But I will not give makeup exams. If you ask me for a makeup exam, I'm going to refer you directly to this course policy. The one exception to that is if you are doing some official WashU sponsored activity. Usually that's like a sports team has to travel out of town for a game or something. We can talk about that. Usually coaches can proctor in that situation. But otherwise, if you have to miss an exam, the final exam is the makeup exam. If you have to miss 2 exams, I hope that doesn't happen to you, because that usually means that something has really gone wrong, right? But it happens. It definitely does happen. Come talk to me. Please come talk to me. I don't want you to feel like it's hopeless. I don't want you to feel like your grade is completely shot because you happen to get sick and then get in a car accident or something, right, in the same semester. Come talk to me. Please, we'll try to figure something out. Okay? Trying to think if there's anything else I need to say about that. One other final thing that I'll note about the course policies, some of you maybe have already noticed this. These percentages here, right, don't add up to 100. They add up to 102. That's not an accident. I know how to math, right? I'm not that dumb. So very aware that that is the case. I think of that as baked in extra credit as well. What is that for, right? If somebody comes to me and says, I forgot to take the quiz this week. Well, that's part of your 2% extra credit, right? Okay. You know, you missed the quiz, but whatever. You still can get an A. In fact, do the math on this, right? I think it's worth pointing out that there are going to be 9 assignments, meaning each one is worth 3 point something percent. You could drop an entire assignment and still get an A in this class. I think you could actually technically drop 2 assignments. I'm not sure about 3, but I mean you quite literally could take a 0 on 2 assignments and still walk out of this class with an A if you do well on the exams, which I know is kind of a big if, but still technically possible, right? Still technically possible to do. So, you know, keep that in mind as you're working on the assignments and things like that. I know students have to make decisions all the time about prioritizing work, things like that. I can't make those decisions for you, but I do try to make things as flexible for you as possible so that you can make those decisions to fit your schedule, to fit your lives in the best possible way. Are there any questions about grading, exams, scheduling? I have a few more syllabus day things to talk to you about, but any questions about what we've discussed so far before I move on? Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Yeah?
The exam is written or?
It is written, yeah, it is written. I would love to have it be on the computer. It's again a logistics problem. There's just too many people. If this class were, you know, a fraction of the size, we'd be doing it on the computer. But logistically, that's too big of a hurdle, unfortunately, for this class. So we will be doing it on paper and pencil. The other thing I want to point out is that during exam weeks, right? So I think it's important to note the schedule as well. Like for the first exam that's coming up on February the 13th, Monday becomes exam review day. So every Monday before the exam on Thursday, I'll be here to go over practice problems. I'm going to give you a boatload of practice problems from past exams that you can work on to practice. I'm trying to give you as much opportunity to practice and get prepped for these things as possible. Yeah, good question. Any other questions I can address about the course policies we've discussed so far? Okay, I have a few other syllabus-y kind of things to kind of go over. First off, office hours. We do have a fair amount of TA office hours. You can see the schedule here, although we're not going to start until January 27th, which is before the first homework assignment is due. It's a few days before the first homework assignment is due. But my office hours are by appointment. If I have open office hours, then 50 people show up, and I just can't, right? I just can't deal with that giant volume of people all coming at me at once. So I wish that I could have open office hours. I actually would prefer it that way. It'd be a little easier for me to manage my schedule that way. But when I tried to have open office hours, it led to me feeling like I wasn't able to give students the attention that I wanted. So in order to do that properly, I've resorted to requiring students to make an appointment with me. But please, I want to see you in my office. I want to help you. I want to answer your questions. I also want to make it clear, too, that if you want to email me directly, you can. If you want to message me on Canvas, you can. You can use whatever way of getting in touch with me that you want to. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to get angry. I want you to ask me questions. I want to help you. That is what I'm here for. I also want you to understand, though, I kind of mentioned this before, I'm just one guy, and I have, hundreds of students this semester. And not to mention, I'm a dad, and at home I tend to spend a lot of time doing that, not working so much. So, if you're depending on me, you might have to be a little bit more patient, which is why the TA office hours exist. There's a lot more TAs than there are me. I know that sometimes people show up to TA's office hours and they don't get the answer they're looking for. It happens sometimes. Come see me then. Make an appointment. Come see me. Shoot me an email. Or we have a message board system called Piazza. So Piazza is just an online message board. I'm not logged in. That's why it's not showing me the message board. I should have logged in, I suppose. But you'll need to actually click on the Piazza link and make yourself a Piazza account and join the class. As Vicky was kind of saying, this is how we distribute announcements as well. So if I have to, if I get sick and I have to cancel class, I'm going to post about it on Piazza. I am not going to send you an email, right? I'm going to post about it on Piazza. When exam grades are ready, and I'm going to give them back to you, I'm going to post about it on Piazza. So if you are interested in keeping up with the class, then signing up for Piazza is a requirement. Should take you just a few minutes to do. And this is also a place to go ask questions if you get stuck on stuff. The reason why I like to point students here is because, yes, I'm on Piazza, and yes, I will answer questions on Piazza, but also all 40 of my TAs are on there. And so the odds of somebody seeing your question quickly are much better on Piazza than if you email me directly. Yes, I will get back to you. I'm not going to say I'm going to ignore you, but it's just going to take me longer. That's just a fact. It will usually take me longer to get back to you. If you're looking for an answer quickly, Piazza's your best bet. However, if it's a personal question, then yeah, of course, send it to me, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Although honestly, the best way to get my attention is to make an appointment, because then you got my dedicated attention. You're right in front of me, and we can talk about whatever you need to talk about. So that would be my preferred way for you to set up appointments. But email, Piazza, Canvas, whatever. If you need to ask me a question, ask me the question. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad. That's what I'm here for. And then one or two other things that I wanted to talk to you about. Oh yes, this is a big one. Use of AI tools. So yeah, you've probably heard of this thing called ChatGPT. It's a really cool tool. I'm a big fan of it. And maybe this will surprise you, maybe it won't. It's allowed. You can use ChatGPT in this class. I want to be very careful though about what that means, because consider that ChatGPT is very good at doing some things, but ChatGPT is not going to be in the room when you're taking the exam, right? You're not going to have ChatGPT on the exam. You're also not going to have access to ChatGPT when you come to submit your homework assignment. The TA is going to ask you questions, and you are going to have to provide the answers to those questions, not ChatGPT. So, is ChatGPT an allowable resource? Yes, it is. However, I would not feel like I'm doing my job properly if I didn't try and discourage you from using it in this class. I don't want to tell you not to use it. In fact, there's one assignment where I'm explicitly going to ask you to use ChatGPT. It's a cool tool. It should be used. It's progress. It's technological progress in a very interesting and fascinating way. We don't even understand all the implications of it yet, right? That's kind of an exciting time for us to be in. But one thing that I do know, and I've seen in these past few semesters since ChatGPT has come along, it makes it too easy to not do the practice. Can ChatGPT do my homework assignments that I'm going to ask you to do? Yes, absolutely. Very easily. Nope. Trivially. ChatGPT can easily crank out a solution to probably any problem that I'm going to ask you to. Maybe towards the end of the semester it would get a little bit shakier because the concepts get bigger and a little bit more complicated. But the vast majority of things ChatGPT is going to do just fine at. But I can tell you from experience that after the first exam, I'm going to have some students asked to meet with me, and they're going to come into my office. This has happened before. They're going to come in my office and be like, I got 100% on all the assignments, and I just bombed the exam. And my question is going to be, what practice have you been doing? Have you been ChatGPTing the assignments, or have you been typing the assignments? Because on the exam, I'm going to ask you to write stuff down. And if you're not used to writing code, it's going to feel very difficult, right? I want you to get good at writing code. I'm going to ask you questions on the exam about writing code. If you let ChatGPT write all your code, you're not going to be prepared. You're not going to be prepared for that exam. So, can you use ChatGPT? Yes. It's not an AI violation to use ChatGPT. I will not write anybody up for using ChatGPT. Do I think it's a good idea? No. Not for the majority of the stuff that we're going to do in this class. I think it's a bad idea. There are some exceptions, right? But I think using ChatGPT when you're learning this skill for the first time is much more of a detriment than an advantage. Once you have the basics, once you have the basic concept of coding and are a little bit more advanced, then ChatGPT is a really great tool, right? But you got to know what you're talking about. You got to know what ChatGPT is talking about in order to use it effectively. So that's why we really stress in this class. You show up to lab, you have the code working, it does everything it needs to do. Okay, that's great. We're going to ask you questions to see how well you understand that code. And that's what your grade is on, not how well the code works. I'm basically assuming that it's easy for everybody to show up with working code. I want to know, do you understand that code? And I'm also trying to make the argument that if you write that code yourself, you're going to understand it a lot better than if ChatGPT writes it or your friend writes it, which also happens, right? Or things like that. So practice, 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 practice. That is sort of the moral of this story. Any questions about that? I promise we're going to do some actual coding today. We're getting close. We're getting close to being done with the syllabus stuff. Not seeing any questions, so let's go on. And I kind of already talked about how to do well in this course. Besides practicing, getting help. And okay, some people might say, well, ChatGPT can help me. And okay, you're not necessarily wrong, but ChatGPT is not here on Mondays. ChatGPT doesn't know what I'm talking to you about. A lot of times, ChatGPT will try and do things differently than how I teach you how to do things, which isn't necessarily wrong. But remember, you need to understand this stuff. So if ChatGPT decides to, whip out a chainsaw when I'm trying to show you how to use a butter knife, right? It's going to seem very complicated and very hard to understand. I'm showing you how to use the butter knife for a reason, right? Like, we're going to take it slow and ease into things. ChatGPT is going to spit out code like it's been programming for 30 years because it's a computer, right? It's trained. So just keep that in mind. Use the resources. Use the resources that are available to you. Another thing that I like to ask students when they come to my class and tell me they're struggling is like, okay, have you been to office hours? Why haven't you been to my office hours? I've never seen you before, right? If you're struggling that badly, why haven't I seen you before? Why aren't you coming in and asking me questions? Use the resources that are available to you. Please, 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 please. Our TAs are literally trained to help you with this class, with this material. That is their job. ChatGPT, while very wise and good at programming, is not trained to do that. Has no idea what this course is, what the structure of the course is, or anything like that. So, please rely on the TAs. Please rely on the instructors. Please practice and resist that urge to use ChatGPT as a shortcut. I think I already covered all the various ways that you can use to get help. I do have to mention academic integrity. It is very important. While I won't get upset with you for using ChatGPT on your assignment, there are still ways to be, dishonest with your work. I think if you do use ChatGPT so I think the most common way that people run into AI trouble these days, you're allowed to use ChatGPT if you show up to my office to turn in an assignment and you tell me that you wrote that code, but ChatGPT actually wrote that code, I'm going to be unhappy. I will be much happier if you just tell me ChatGPT wrote this. Trying to pretend like you wrote it is dishonest. And it's honestly going to have an effect on my interpretation of your answers, right? The understanding of the code that ChatGPT writes is going to be slightly different than if you had written it yourself, or if I had written it, or if anybody else had written it. So it does make a difference. There's no reason to lie about where the code came from. Please be honest about that. During the demonstration process, when the TAs are asking you questions, that's sort of another area where academic integrity comes into play. We're not Googling stuff during that time. We're not asking friends for help during that time. By the time you get there to submit the assignment, you'll actually, there's a rubric posted for every single assignment. You will know exactly what questions the TAs will ask you, and you can prepare for them and should prepare for those questions ahead of time. There should be no surprises, right? The TAs are not going to try and trick you. They're not going to try and ask you super hard questions. You will know what the questions are. They're going to follow the rubric just like a script and ask you those questions. So you can prepare ahead of time. You should be 100% ready to tell the TAs your answers to the questions about the assignment that you're submitting, whether you wrote it or whether ChatGPT wrote it, right? That should be the case. So please, I want to point out too that I already kind of pointed out the grading flexibility, especially on assignments. I feel like it's so silly to, it's silly to do it for anything because the risk is so huge. If you get caught doing any kind of academic integrity violation, there's a whole formal process now. I report you to the school. And if it happens on one assignment, I typically will just zero out that thing. If it happens on more than one, I usually recommend an F in the class. I don't really mess around. It's that serious. So I don't think it's worth the risk. If you're sitting up, in the middle of the night thinking about the assignment that's due tomorrow, and you just want to try and take the easy way out or whatever, I can't stop you from doing that. But I would like to point out the fact that we take partial credit. So you can show up with just part of the assignment and get 50 of the points out of 100, and that's still better than a 0, right? I would argue that even taking the 0 is better than trying to get involved with academic integrity. It's not fun. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for you. It's extra time, extra stuff that you have to deal with. Just not worth it. Just not worth the risk. So please keep that in mind. I know that it's tempting when you've got deadlines looming, and this isn't your only class, right? You got other deadlines looming for other classes too. Something's got to give. Well, consider taking the 0. Consider taking the partial credit. Not as bad as risking an academic integrity violation, in my full opinion. Get help. We want to help you. Use your late coupons, right? And honestly, even though I may say no and decline your request, if you're out of late coupons or something, come ask me. That's still better than risking an academic integrity violation. Worst I'm going to say is no, sorry, can't help you. And you might end up taking a 0 anyway, but at least you don't have an academic integrity violation on your record. All right. We're about to start coding. But before I do that, just a couple things to keep in mind. Actually, this is a little bit inaccurate. I would like for you to sign up for Piazza between now and Wednesday. The other thing that I'd like to point your attention to, which some of you have already found and done, which I think is great, this guy right here, software installation and setup. Technically, that's what we're asking you to do on Wednesday when you come to class. If you want to get a jump start on things, you can do it right now. The instructions are all there on Canvas. So if you want to download the software and get it set up so you're all ready to go, that's a thing you can do. If you don't get to it before Wednesday, that's fine. You'll have time in class on Wednesday to do this and get it ready. I also want to point out that while the normal flow would be to expect you to do some prep work before coming to class on Mondays, this is the first day of class, so obviously that's not a thing that could really be expected of you. So I am about to go over the Module 1 exercises, or as many of them as I have time for. I see that I've got about half an hour left. I will not be able to get through them all. I'm just not going to have enough time. But instead of having them, done before coming to class today, since it is the very first one, I'm asking you to take a look at these Module 1 exercises before coming to class next Wednesday. We don't have class on Monday because of MLK Day. So please take a look at these Module 1 exercises before coming to class next Wednesday. That means you'll come to class this Wednesday, get your computer set up, and do a very short exercise. And then by next Wednesday, we hope that you will review these Module 1 exercises. But as I just said, I'm actually about to start doing that now. So I'm going to try and give you a little bit of a jump start. This is not normally how I would do things. Again, I am normally not going to go through these exercises in class, unless you explicitly ask me to, in which case I'd be more than happy to. I'm normally going to ask review questions and go through additional practice problems that aren't in the prep work. But since today's the first day of class, and I didn't want to ask you to do prep work over break, because that would just be a really mean thing to do, we're going to go over some of these Module 1 exercises right now. Before I do that, though, I just want to pause one more time. I'm about to start coding. I'm done, I think, talking about all the syllabus stuff. Are there any questions related to syllabus-y, course policy types of things before we hop into the fun stuff and start coding? Any questions that I can address at all? Okay, great, awesome. Then let's write some code. This is we got about half an hour. I want to kind of show you what we're going to be working with this semester. If you've done the software installation and setup already, then you probably already have gotten here or very close to here. Maybe you ran into a problem. That's not very unusual, to be honest with you. We'll be available in the labs on Wednesday to help you if you ran into a problem or some other issue with getting this stuff set up. If you haven't gotten this stuff set up yet, don't worry about it. You will on Wednesday at the very latest. You can just sit back and chill and treat this as a demonstration for today. You do not need to worry about setting it up right now. It's not necessarily important. But you're going to get very familiar with using this program. This program is called Eclipse, and it is what we call an IDE, which is short for Integrated Development Environment. And we use it to write code. Not just to write code, though, but also to run the code and view what the code does. And we also use it to help us fix problems with our code, because it's inevitable. We are human. We are going to make mistakes. I would argue that fixing problems in our code is arguably more important than getting it correct the first time, because nothing happens correctly the first time. We make mistakes. We're humans. So eventually you're going to get this loaded up if you haven't done so already. And then one of the first things we're going to ask you to do is load up what's called a repository. And that's what this guy is over here on the left. This is a repository that contains, whoops, that's not the right one. That contains all of the exercises for Module 1, Module 2, and Module 3. So basically up to the first exam. So everything that we're going to be talking about between now and the first exam is here. The stuff that I'm asking you to do before next Wednesday is just Module 1. So just the first chunk. When you come to class 2 weeks from now, because next week is MLK Day, then you'll be responsible for, the Module 2 stuff, and then the week after that, the Module 3 stuff. And then after that, there'll be another group of exercises for the second exam and another group for the third exam. Okay? And so when you look at the textbook, if I can go back to the exercises real quick. When you look at the textbook, there's some reading, but then eventually you'll get to these coding exercises, and it says, open this file. I literally want you to find this file, which is right here. We're in Module 1.1, Why Java. That's the Why Programming, Why Java, Module 1.1. So it says, all right, open this example, and then do this stuff. That's quite literally what I'm hoping you will do. This is the practice. This is the learning, right? I know how to do this stuff. I've been programming for years. This isn't for me. This is for you all to do. So I'm going to kind of go through some of these today just to give you a feel for it. You'll notice there's a lot of them. They're all very short. Each one of these, I think, should take you a few minutes at the most to kind of play around with, especially when we're getting started out. Examples we're gonna have lots of examples, and they're gonna be tiny. And then when we get to the end of the semester, it's gonna be kind of the opposite. We're gonna have fewer examples, but they're gonna be bigger. So I understand if it looks a little overwhelming to see this much stuff, but I promise you that while there is kind of a lot of examples, they go very quickly. Each one will take you just a few minutes. And so here's the very first one. This is actually a very famous style of program. It's called a Hello World program, and its goal in life is to simply display the message hello on the screen. Another way of thinking about this is kind of the bare minimum of what you need to have a computer program, at least for this class. I think that's kind of worth talking about a little bit as well. This is a language called Java. It's not the only language that exists. Computers actually know lots of different languages. So Java is one language. It's the one that we're going to be using in this class. A lot of you, if you have programming experience, you may have run into a language called Python. That's another very popular language for introductory classes. In fact, I get asked that question a lot. Why are we using Java instead of Python? I mean, it's potato, kind of, if you ask me, right? I'm not really trying to teach you Java in this class so much as I'm trying to teach you general programming concepts. And I would make the argument that if you know how to do something in Java, you can figure out how to do it in Python, because you can use the existing knowledge that you have to help you figure out that other language. It's kind of like how you see some words in Spanish and you're like, oh, I kind of recognize those because they are similar. There are similar words in English, right? That's true for computer programming languages as well. Maybe you don't know the full language, but you can kind of pick up enough clues from the things that are similar to figure out what's going on. Very true for programming languages. But back to this example at hand, the only thing that I'm honestly, too interested in talking to you about right now is this line right here. This we're not going to talk about for actually everything above here. We're not really going to talk about for quite some time. So you can treat this as kind of magic words, hocus pocus, abracadabra, that we need to get our code up and running for now. This we'll talk about sooner than the top one, but still kind of a few weeks away of talking too much about what this line of code is doing. However, it is also necessary. It is also required. So you can think of, line 5 and line 3 as being just sort of the basic structure that you need to get a program off the ground. So every single program that we look at in this class is going to have these two lines. They might look a little bit different depending on what we're doing, but they're going to be there. I'm not going to tell you what they mean right now because we're going to take it baby steps. But I promise you, by Module 5, we'll talk about this in a lot more detail. And by Module 7, we'll talk about that in a lot more detail. It's coming. What I want to talk to you about today is this. So for our purposes, and this is true, basically up to the first exam and maybe even a little bit beyond, our computer program consists of everything that appears within these brackets. So our computer program is just a series of statements, a series of instructions. We're telling the computer what to do. And the computer is going to look at whatever I write in between these two brackets and do those things. So in this case, there's just one statement. We're not limited, of course. We can have as many statements as we would like, and we'll see bigger programs as we go along. But this is doing the very simplest, most basic of things. It's just printing out a message that says hello. And in order to run this, there's actually a couple of different ways that you can actually run this code to see what it actually does. I'm going to start it by right-clicking the name of the file over here on the left, going down to this green circle and selecting Run as Java Application. And once I do that, after I click a couple of buttons, you'll see that the program runs and displays the very simple message down at the bottom. That is the only instruction we've included here, so that's all that it does. It prints out hello, and then the program is over. It is the shortest, most simplest program that you can possibly conceive of, right? But this already kind of gets you into a place where you can think about how to change things. So we want to, you can see the exercise is to modify this to print out your name. Well, that's easy enough to do, right? We just need to go figure out this is what's getting displayed, the stuff in between these quotation marks. So if we come down here and we replace this part with my name or your cat's name or whoever you want to say hi to, then when we run the program again, notice I ran it a different way this time. I actually just clicked this green circle up at the top. Both will work. You can right click and go down here and run it that way, or you can click this green circle up here at the top. Those will both get you there. But when I run the program after making a modification to it, it now uses my modifications, right? This is the workflow that you're going to get into in this class. Write a little bit of code, run it, see what it does, make a change to it, add something to it, run it, see what it does. Okay, make another change, make another addition, run it, see what it does. That's kind of the workflow for this class. So let's talk about other things that we can do. We're going to take a look at, you'll notice I'm already skipping some of these examples, just not going to have time to do them all. So please take a look at these on your own time. But exercise number 3, you can see we're doing more, there's more than one statement here now, right? So if we run this, you might, kind of try and predict what's going to happen. It's going to say hi there. It looks like it might do exactly the same thing as the last one, honestly, because I can see it's printing basically the same thing. But if we look at what actually happens, you can see that it's not quite the same. It happened a little bit differently. And you may have noticed that actually the statements themselves have changed a little bit, right? I see 2 different kinds of statements here. I see print and I see println. So this is our first example of computers being extremely literal in what they do. You might look at this and say, hey, why is that exclamation point on a line all by itself? Well, that's what we told it to do. It's there because that's what the instructions say. So think about the difference between what these 2 instructions actually are. If I just say print by itself, it's going to do that. It's going to print out this word, and it's going to stay on the same line where it currently is, right? So when I print out the next thing there, you can see that it is on the same line. I haven't told it to move down yet. What's telling it to move down? This guy. When I use println, that instruction says print this word out and then move down to the next line. So whatever gets printed out after this will be down 1. You can think of it very much like the old school typewriters where you have to go cha-ching right at the end of the line. That's what this is doing. It's moving us back to the beginning of the next line so that I can start typing from there. So, what would I do? How would I change this code if I wanted it to print all on the same line? Anybody have any ideas about what I would need to modify? Yeah. Just take the ln off. Yeah, that's a very acceptable answer. I was waiting, though, for somebody to give me perhaps the other more obvious answer, which is why not just do it all in one like we did on the previous problem? Also a very good answer, right? There is actually no need to break this up into 3 different instructions, but kind of interesting to note that we can break this up into 3 different instructions if we want to, if it is necessary for some reason for us to do so. That's going to be another very reoccurring theme in this class. There is never going to be just one way of accomplishing what we're going to try to accomplish. There will always be multiple ways of getting there. So, just because I show you one way of doing things doesn't mean that somebody else would do it exactly the same way. It doesn't even mean that you would do it the same way, and that's okay. I actually think that's a good thing about programming, a good thing about what we're doing here. If we keep moving on, so we've been doing stuff with messages. We've been printing out messages. You can see that in this example, which is example number 4 in the first unit, I'm not doing messages anymore, but I'm doing some arithmetic now. Computers are really good at math. You're probably already aware of that fact. So yes, we can do math in our code, and this is going to do exactly what you would expect. I don't know what the result of this multiplication is, but for the computer, that's not too tricky for it to figure out. It's apparently that, right? Okay. And so it will happily print out these values down here. However, you may have noticed that the way that it prints these out is a little bit different than the way that it was printing out the messages from before. What's the difference? Do you notice what's different in the code between how these prints are working versus how these prints were working? What's the big difference? Yeah, I see somebody in the multiple people gesturing at me with the quotes, right? The quotes are here. This is perhaps the most important topic that I am going to introduce to you today, and one that's going to persist throughout the entire semester. When it comes to doing things on the computer, the type of thing that we are dealing with matters. The types matter. So when you see something in quotes like this, we actually have a name for what this is. I would say that this is called a string. String actually being sort of an abbreviation for a string of characters, right? So text on the computer, in this class, we're going to call them strings. And anything that we want to be represented as text, anything that we want to be represented as strings, is going to be wrapped in quotation marks. If I'm doing, not string stuff, if I'm doing arithmetic, if I'm doing computations, you'll notice those quotes aren't there, right? These are numbers. This isn't text. I want to perform an arithmetic operation, so no quotes. But the print, right, is happy to accept either one and does things a little bit differently depending on how I do that. Consider for a second, what happens if I do this? So we know that the result of this computation is this number, right? But think about the implications of me putting quotes around it. What have I told the computer to do? Somebody help me out?
Print whatever is inside it.
I've told the computer that I don't care about these as numbers anymore, but I care about them as a string, as text, right? So the computer is going to look at this and say, well, this is text. I don't do multiplication with text. That's not a thing. How do you multiply hello, right? So the computer is not going to look at this as multiplication. It's going to look at it as text. And when I run this code again, you're going to see that what I get out is not the result of the multiplication, but the expression itself written out as text. Numbers can be thought of as text, right? Or they can be thought of as numbers. In some situations, it'll be better for me to think of them as text. In other situations, it'll be better for me to think of them as numbers, especially if I want to do math stuff, if I want to do arithmetic stuff. So it's our job as programmers to kind of recognize those differences and know when to use strings versus numeric types. Now, just to kind of make things even more interesting / slightly more confusing, this is a different type than this. So there isn't just one kind of numeric value. We actually have two kinds of numeric values that we care about. This one would be described as an integer, or an int for short. And I think you can obviously see why we would call it that, just like we have integers in math class, right? It's a whole number. Negatives also count as integers, negative whole numbers, right? If we bring a decimal point in, though, that is a different type. This we would call a double, which is a very strange name. In order to understand why it's called a double, requires you to know, the historical naming conventions going back to like the 50s and 60s when computing first became a thing, right? It stands for double precision, which replaced single precision. We haven't used single precision in about 50 or 60 years. But anyway, these are ints, and these are doubles. And there's a good reason for making those distinctions, right? Consider that decimal places have this pesky ability to go for a very long time. In fact, decimal values can even do this pesky thing where they can go on infinitely. Can computers represent a decimal that goes on infinitely? It's an interesting question, right? I know that 1 over 3 is 3.33333 forever, right? Can I have 3.33333 infinitely in a computer program? Seems like kind of a silly question. Is my computer infinite? No, I cannot have infinite things on the computer. So in the computer, what would this be? It would be 3.333333333, and eventually, I'm going to see it just stops. It can't go on forever. It's just going to get as close as it possibly can and stop. But the reason why, kind of getting back to the reason why we have these two different types, the doubles and the integer values, these have no such ambiguity, right? This is a very finite thing. It will always be exactly 1. So integers can be represented exactly. I can always represent an integer exactly as I want its value to be. With doubles, that's not always true. That's not always true, and that's why we treat them differently. With doubles, there has to be some rounding involved. There has to be some error involved, just due to the nature of numbers, just due to the nature of decimal values. It's just a limitation on the values themselves. The implication of this is that there's actually differences between operations if I'm using integers versus if I'm using doubles. So I'm telling you that the answer to 2 plus 2 might be different if they're both integers versus if they're both doubles, which might seem a little weird, but that is in fact the case, and it is actually one of the most important things that I want you to get out of this module. The type of our data has an effect on how the computer works with that information, how the computer deals with that information. Let's see, where do I want to go next? Yeah, this is the example that I already just did, right? Where they wrapped this in quotes. It says, modify the second line so that it will print the result of the computation. So they're kind of asking you to do the opposite of what I did in the previous example. They want us to take the quotes off. And then notice what that's going to do. It'll print out the expression, and this one will actually print out the result, the actual arithmetic computation. I'm using a string and integers within the same program to do different things, right? And that's very common. It's very necessary. Again, it's our job as programmers to understand the difference and know that I want the quotes here, but I don't want them here. The computer can't tell me that. The computer can't do that for me. That's my job as the programmer, to make that distinction. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be lots of mistakes. We're humans. We make mistakes all the time. And computers are so picky. So picky. Computers do not like ambiguity. Computers hate ambiguity. As humans, we actually are pretty good at dealing with ambiguity. We deal with ambiguity all the time, and we use our common sense to kind of help us when things aren't necessarily 100% clear. My favorite example of this, in the English language, I could say something like, the children made delicious snacks. And most of you, hopefully, were imagining, kids making ants on a log or peanut butter jelly sandwiches or something. But if I wanted to, I could say the children make delicious snacks as me saying that I like to eat children because they are delicious, right? It's an ambiguous statement depending on how you interpret the way that children make delicious snacks. Am I saying that the children are making the snacks or the children are the snacks, right? The sentence is ambiguous. But you use your common sense. You're like, well, Professor Shook doesn't seem like he would eat kids, so he probably means the first one. Computer's not going to do that. Computer will not do that. If you type something into the computer that's ambiguous or that it doesn't know how to process, it's going to be like, not going there, not touching it. until you tell me exactly what you want me to do. Or perhaps even worse, if you give it something ambiguous, it will make an assumption, but it's not a human, it's a computer. So it's just going to do the easiest thing for the computer to do, which is probably not what you wanted it to do. So it'll just do the wrong thing. All of that is to say that you're going to spend a lot of time in this class trying to figure out exactly how to tell the computer what you want it to do. I mean, that's what programming is. How do I effectively issue instructions to the computer to make it do what I want it to do? And if you get any part of it wrong, the computer is going to complain. These are the most simple kinds of mistakes to fix. So if you do something like this, where very obviously forgot to include the closing quote here, the computer will highlight this and it'll say, string literal is not properly closed by a double quote. Now that's a very, verbose way of saying you forgot to put the quote in, but I feel like most of you would see that and be like, oh yeah, I forgot to put in the quote, and you would know how to fix it, right? So this is a good thing. The computer will catch some of these things and help you fix them. You should always take a look at what Eclipse is trying to tell you. It's trying to help you out. So forgetting quotes is a very common one. What syntax error did I forget here? Our good friend the parenthesis also needs to match, right? If I have an open parenthesis, I have to have a closing parenthesis. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of different ways to make the computer unhappy. In this case, there's actually 2 errors. This one might seem a little bit silly, but I promise you it's a very important thing to keep in mind. Case matters. That has to be capital. If it's not capitalized, it doesn't know what you're talking about. And that's what that error was. And then over here, you can see it's mad because it says insert semicolon. Oh, okay. On the computer, the semicolon is like the period at the end of the sentence. You have to have one after every expression. And if you forget, you're going to see an error message like that. So get used to this idea of the computer being unhappy with you. As I've mentioned, these are actually the simplest kinds of errors that you'll run into. These are called syntax errors. The more difficult kinds of errors are when you do something wrong, but the computer has no idea that you're doing something wrong, right? So if I am writing a program that is computing the area of circles, and I put in the area of a circle as pi times r, forgetting to square it, the computer's not going to know that. The computer's not going to be like, oh, this guy's trying to compute the area of circles, I better square that r for him. No, it's going to do it exactly as I wrote it, and it's going to compute that number and it's going to give it back to me. And if I don't catch the mistake, I'm going to look at this and be like, oh yeah, that's the area of the circle, and use this incorrect value. Those are called logic errors. Those are the more difficult ones to work on, and the ones that we'll probably be spending a lot of time on in this class. All right, I only made it through the first section. I want to reiterate that these sections and the ones that I didn't get to are for you all to do. So please go home, start taking a look at these. You have until next week, so plenty of time. And I'll see you in the labs on Wednesday.